Are you worried about something? What is worry? Worry is simply when we let our imagination take us to a place that has not yet occurred. And whether it will or not occur is immaterial to that moment. Oftentimes when we're looking at stuff, somebody's really worried and they're thinking of all these bad outcomes. But what is the antithesis of that? What is the opposite of that? That is going to be faith. A lot of times when people use the word faith, they think that that means believing in God. But the reality is, it's so much more than that. You see, we're called to believe in Christ, and by this believing we have salvation in His name. But when we're talking about faith, there's two really important times, Mark 11 and Matthew 17, where Jesus says to them, if you had faith the size of a mustard seed, you would tell this mulberry tree, which is very important that He says this specific tree, because this tree has a root system that is very deep and intertwines with other trees. So to remove this tree would be very difficult. It's an analogy that He's using to show with a little bit of faith, you will do this impossible. He says that you will grab this mulberry tree and cast it into the sea, right? And so when we're looking at that and we're thinking, what does that mean? So often believers see that and they think, man, I'm not being faithful enough, or it's almost like this condemnation reception of that message, when the reality is what happens two things before that is Jesus has cursed this fig tree and His men say to Him, how did you do that? And that is His answer. And another time He's coming down from the mountain and there was these demons that could not be cast out by His men. And He says to them the same there. Or likewise, another time that's really significant is when Jesus is He's walking on the water and His men are in a boat and there's this kind of torrential storm that's happening. As He approaches them, Peter says to Him, Lord, call that I should get out of the boat and walk with you. Jesus says, get out of the boat. Peter starts walking on the water and then he looks around and worries. He sees this crazy situation and imagines what happens if this doesn't work out. And then he begins to sink and he calls out, Lord, save me. Jesus takes him by a hand. He picks him up, puts him back in the boat. And Jesus says to him, why did you doubt? And a lot of times people see that and they go, well, he doubted in Jesus. He didn't doubt in Jesus. He calls out to Jesus. That's the opposite of doubt. So who did he doubt? He doubted himself. He let the situation say, I don't know if I am capable of faithfully trusting this situation for what God has promised, that I can walk on this water. And therefore his worry sets in. You see, your imagination will run with faith or your imagination will run with worry. And if you allow yourself to see the future in a dire outcome, then you are not being faithful. What you must do is you must first believe that the promise is there and then let your actions reflect that. Get out into the water. Take the big steps. And when people say, well, what if it doesn't work out? And your faithful mind and the pursuit that you're chasing after says, well, what if it does? Smile in this face of adversity, because there will always be challenges. There will always be storms. This is okay. And living and dying is not the ultimate outcome. Living faithfully and taking on these challenges and believing in yourself because of the promise God gave you to trust what God's bestowed on you, to be a faithful warrior, to go out, that is to be faithful. And so as we are progressing, instead of saying, well, what about these challenges? Maybe we say, what about these successes that are going to come? I will hit challenges, I will have failures, but my faithful pursuit is, and so what? Next we shall go, on we shall go. Bring it on. Let's go, over and over. Look forward to talking to you guys soon. See you.